Hello, viewers of the future. I'm Endragh, and we're continuing with some more Color of Magic. So last time, what was happening was Twoflower saved Rincewind as he was falling to the earth with his magical dragon, and Hearn now has to fight Liza's two brothers, Lorette and Laertes, who are both fighting on dragons. Yeah, very quick intro today. And start. At the last minute, he pushed Liza aside and felt the wild pain of the flames on his arm as he dived for safety. He rolled as he hit the ground and flipped onto his feet again while he looked around frantically for the other dragon. It came in from one side, and Hearn was forced to take a badly judged standing jump to escape the flame. The dragon's tail whipped around as it passed and caught him a stinging blow across the forehead. He pushed himself upright, shaking his head to make the wheeling stars go away. His blistered back screamed pain at him. Loyert, can't get that name still, came in for a second run, but slower this time to allow for the big man's unexpected agility. As the ground drifted up, he saw the barbarian standing stock still, chest heaving, arms hanging loosely by his side. An easy target. As his dragon swooped away, Loyert turned his head, expecting to see a dreadfully big cinder. There was nothing there. Puzzled, Loyert turned back. Hearn, heaving himself over the dragon's shoulder scale with one hand and beating out his flaming hair with the other, presented himself to his view. Loyert's hands flew to his dagger, but pain had sharpened Hearn's normally excellent reflexes to needlepoint. A backhand blow hammered into the dragon lord's wrist, sending the dagger arcing away towards the ground, and another caught the man full on the chin. The dragon, carrying the weight of two men, was only a few yards above the grass. This turned out to be fortunate, because at that moment Loyert lost consciousness. The dragon winked. Because at the moment Loyert lost consciousness, the dragon winked out of existence. Liza hurried across the grass and helped Hearn stagger to his feet. He blinked at her. "What happened? What happened?" he said thickly. "That was really fantastic," she said. "The way you turned into that somersault in midair and everything." "Yeah, but what happened?" "It's rather difficult to explain." Hearn peered up at the sky. Laertes, by far the most cautious of the two brothers, was circling high above them. Well, you've got about 10 seconds to try," he said. "The dragons—" "Yeah? They're imaginary. Like all these imaginary burns on my arms, you mean?" "Yes! No!" She shook her head violently. "I'll have to tell you later." "Fine, if you can find a really good medium," snapped Hearn. He glared up at Laertes, who was beginning to descend in wild sweeps. "Just listen, will you? Unless my brother is conscious, his dragon can't exist. It's got no pathway through to this—" "Run!" shouted Hearn. He threw her away from him and flung himself flat on the ground as Laertes' dragon thundered by, leaving another smoking scar across the turf. While the creature sought height for another sweep, Hearn scrambled to his feet and set off at a deep run for the woods at the edge of the arena. They were sparse, little more than a wild and overgrown hedge, but at least no dragon could be able to fly through them. It didn't try. Laertes brought his mount in to land on the turf a few yards away and dismounted. Cautiously, the dragon folded its wings and poked its head in among the greenery, while its master leaned against a tree and whistled tunelessly. "I can burn you out," said Laertes after a while. The brush remained motionless. "Perhaps you're in that holly bush over there?" The holly bush became a waxy ball of flames. "I'm sure I can see movement in those ferns." The ferns became mere skeletons of white ash. "You're only prolonging it, barbarian. Why not give in now?" "Why not give in now? I've burned lots of people. It doesn't hurt a bit," said Laertes, looking sideways at the bushes. The dragon continued through the spiny, incinerating every likely-looking bush and clump of ferns. Laertes drew his sword and waited. Hearn dropped from a tree and landed running. Behind him the dragon roared and crashed through the bushes as it tried to turn around. But Hearn was running, with his gaze fixed on Laertes and a dead branch in his hands. It is a little known but true fact that for a two-legged creature It is a little known but true fact that a two-legged creature can usually beat a four-legged creature over a short distance, simply because of the time it takes the quadrille to get his legs sorted out. Hearn heard the scrabbling of claws behind him, and then an ominous thump. The dragon had half opened its wings and was trying to fly. As Hearn bore down on the Dragon Lord, Laertes' sword came up wickedly, to be caught on the branch. Then Hearn cannoned into him, and the two men sprawled on the ground. The dragon roared. Laertes screamed as Hearn brought a knee upward with anatomically precision, but managed a wild blow that re-broke the barbarian's nose for him. Hearn kicked away and scrambled to his feet, to find himself looking up into the wide horse face of the dragon, its nostrils distended. He lashed out with a foot and caught Laertes, who was trying to stand up, on the other side of the head. On the side of his head. The man slumped. The dragon vanished. The ball of fire that was billowing towards Hearn faded until, when it reached him, it was no more than a puff of warm air. Then there was no sound but the crackle of burning bushes. Hearn slung the unconscious Dragon Lord over his shoulder and set off at a trot back to the arena. Halfway there, he found Laertes spawned on the ground, one leg bent awkwardly. He stooped and, with a grunt, hoisted the man over his vacant shoulder. Liza and the Lord Master were waiting on a raised dial at one end of the meadow. The dragon woman had quite recovered her composure now, and looked levelly at Hearn as he threw the two men down on the steps before her. The people around her were standing in deferential poses, like a court. "Kill them," she said. "I kill in my own time," he said. "In any case, killing unconscious people isn't right." "I can't think of a more opportune time," said the Lord Master. Oops, I can't think of wrong voice for that one. "I can't think of a more opportune time," said the Lord Master. Liza snorted. "Then I shall banish them," she said. "Once they are beyond the reach of the Weinberg's magic, then they have no power. They'll be simple brigands. Will that satisfy you?" "Yes." "I'm surprised that you are so merciful, Hearn." Hearn shrugged. "A man in my position, he can't afford to be anything else. He's got to consider his image." He looked around. "Where's the next test, then?" "I warn you, this is perilous. If you wish, you may leave now. If you pass the test, however, you will become Lord of the Wernbergs and, of course, my lawful husband." Hearn met her gaze. He thought about his life, to date. It suddenly seemed to him to have been full of long, damp nights sleeping under the stars, desperate fights with trolls, city guards, countless bandits and evil priests, and, on at least 3 occasions, actual demigods. And for what? Well, for quite a lot of treasure, he had to admit. But where had it all gone? Rescuing beleaguered maidens had a certain passing reward, but most of the time he'd finish up by setting them up in some city somewhere with a handsome dowry, because after a while even the most agreeable ex-maiden becomes possessive and has scant sympathy for his efforts to rescue her sister sufferers. Because after a while even the most agreeable ex-maiden became possessive and had scant sympathy for his efforts to rescue her sister sufferers. In short, life had really left him with little more than a reputation and a network of scars. Being a lord might be fun, Hearn grinned. With a base like this, all these dragons, and a good bunch of fighting men, a man could really be a contender. Besides, the wench was not uncomely. "The third test," she said. "Am I to be weaponless again?" said Hearn. Liza reached up and removed her helmet, letting the coils of red hair tumble out. Then she unfastened the brooch of her robe. Underneath, she was naked. As Hearn's gaze swept over her, his mind began to operate two notions hold on. As Hearn's gaze swept over her, his mind began to operate two notional counting machines. One asserting the gold in her bangles, the tiger rubies that ornamented her toe ring, the diamond spangle that adorned her navel, and two highly individual whirligigs of silver filigree. The other was plunged straight into his libido. Both both produced tallies that pleased him mightily. As she raised a hand and offered a glass of wine, she smiled and said, "I think not." Break. That's also the last time we see the two. All right. Oh, no, wait, never mind. Sorry. "He didn't attempt to rescue you," Rincewind pointed out as a last resort. He clung desperately to Twoflower's waist as the dragon circled slowly, tilting the world at a dangerous angle. The new knowledge that the scaly back he was astride only existed as a sort of three-dimensional daydream did not, he had soon realized, do anything at all for his ankle-wrenching sensation of vertigo. His mind kept straying towards the possible results of Twoflower losing his concentration. Not even Hearn could have prevailed against those crossbows," said Twoflower studiously. As the dragon rose higher above the patch of woodlands where the three of them had slept a damp and uneasy sleep, the sun rose over the edge of the disk. Instantly, the gloomy blues and grays of pre-dawn were transformed into a bright bronze river that flowed across the world, flaring into gold where it struck ice or water or a light dam. Owing to the density of the magical field surrounding the disk, light itself moved at subsonic speeds. This interesting property was well utilized by the Sorca people, the Great Nerf, for example, who over the centuries had constructed intricate and delicate dams and valleys walled with polished silica to catch the slow sunlight and sort of store it. The scientific reserves of the Nerf, overflowing after several weeks of uninterrupted sunlight, were a truly magnificent sight from the air, and it is therefore unfortunate that Twoflower Rincewind did not happen to glance in that direction. Yeah, that was just an extra chunk of information, because why not? In front of them, the billion-ton impossibility that was the magical wrought Wernberg hung against the sky, and that was not too bad, until Rincewind turned his head and saw the mountain shadow slowly unrolling itself across the cloudscapes of the world. "What can you see?" said Twoflower to the dragon. "I see fighting on the top of the mountain," came the gentle reply. "See?" said Twoflower. "Hearn's probably fighting for his life at this very moment." Rincewind was silent. After a moment, Twoflower looked around. The wizard was staring intently at nothing at all, his lips moving soundlessly. "Rincewind?" The wizard made a small choking noise. "I'm sorry," said Twoflower. "What did you say?" "All the way. The Great Fall," muttered Rincewind, his eyes focused, looking puzzled for a moment, then widened in terror. He made the mistake of looking down. "Arg!" he opted, and began to slide. Twoflower grabbed him. "What's the matter?" Rincewind tried shutting his eyes, but there were no eyelids to his imagination, and it was staring widely. Don't you get scared of heights?" he managed to say. Twoflower looked down at the tiny landscape, molted with cloud shadows. The thought of fear hadn't actually occurred to him. "No," he said. "Why should I? You're just as dead if you fall from 40 feet as you are from 4,000 fathoms. That's what I say." Rincewind tried to consider this dispassionately, but couldn't see the logic of it. It wasn't the actual falling, it was the hitting Twoflower grabbed him quickly. "Steady on," he said cheerfully. "We're nearly there." "I wish I was back in the city," moaned Rincewind. "I wish I was back on the ground." "I wonder if dragons can fly all the way to the stars," mused Twoflower. "Now that would be something." "You're mad," Rincewind said flatly. There was no reply from the tourist, and when the wizard craned around, he was horrified to see Twoflower looking up at the paling stars with an odd smile on his face. "Don't you even think about it," added Rincewind menacingly. "The man you seek is talking to the dragon woman," said the dragon. said Twoflower, still looking at the pale stars. What? Said Rincewind urgently. Oh, yes, Hern, said Twoflower. I hope we're in time. Dive now! Go low! Rincewind opened his eyes as the wind increased to a whistling gale. Perhaps they were blown blown open. The wind. Perhaps they were. Okay. Sorry. Perhaps they were blown open. The wind certainly made them impossible to shut. The flat summit of the Wernberg rose up at them, lurching alarmingly, and then somersaulting into a green blur that flashed by on either side. Tiny woods and fields blurred into a rushing patchwork. A brief silvery flash in the landscape may have been the little river that overflowed into the air at the plateau's rim. Rincewind tried to force the memory out of his mind, but it was rather enjoying itself there, terrorizing the other occupants and kicking over the furniture. I think not, said Liza. Hern took the wine cup slowly. He grinned like a pumpkin. Around the arena the dragons started to bay. Their riders looked up, and something like a green blur flashed across the arena, and Hern was gone. Or had gone. The wine cup hung momentarily in the air, then crashed down on the steps. Only then did a single drop spill. This was because, in the instant of unfolding enfolding Hern gently in his claws, Nine Reeds the dragon had momentarily synchronized their bodily rhythms. Since the dimension of the imagination is much more complex than those of time and space, which are very junior dimensions indeed, the effect of this was to instantaneously transform a stationary and principal Hern into a Hern moving sideways at 80 miles an hour with no ill effects whatsoever, except for a few wasted mouthfuls of wine. Another effect was to cause Liza to scream with rage and summon her dragon. As the gold beast materialized in front of her, she leapt astride, still naked, and snatched a crossbow from one of the guards. Then she was airborne, while the other dragon riders swarmed towards their own beasts. The Lord Master, watching from the pillar he had prudentially slid behind in the mad scramble, happened at that moment to catch the cross-dimensional echoes of a theory being at the same instant hatched in the mind of an elderly psychiatrist in an adjusted universe, possibly because the dimension leak was flowing both ways, and for a moment the psychiatrist saw the girl on the dragon. The Lord Master smiled. Want to bet that she won't catch him? Want to bet? I can't do old man voice. Want to bet she won't catch him? Said Gretchen in a voice of worms and speculates, right by his ear. The Lord Master shut his eyes and swallowed hard. I thought that my lord would now be residing fully in the dreamland, he managed. I am a wizard, said Gretchen. Death himself must claim a wizard, and, he doesn't appear to be in the neighborhood. Shall we go? Said Death. He was on a white horse, a horse of flesh and blood, but red of eyes and fiery of nostrils, and he stretched out a bony hand and took Gretchen's soul out of the air and rolled it up until it was a point of painful light, and then he swallowed it. Then he clapped spurs to his steed, and it sprang into the air, sparks coruscant from its hooves. Lord Gretchen? Gretcha? Whispered the old Lord Master, as the universe flickered around him. That was a mean trick, said the wizard's voice, a mere speck of sound disappearing into the infinite black dimension. My lord, what is death like? Called the old man tremulously. When I have investigated fully, I will let you know, came the faintest of modules on the breeze. Yes, murmured the Lord Master. A thought struck him. During daylight, please, he added. You clowns! Screamed Hern from his perch on Nine Reed's claws. What did he say? Roared Rincewind as the dragon ripped its way through the air in the race for the heights. Didn't hear! Bellowed Twoflower, his voice torn away by the gale. As the dragon banked slightly, he looked down at the little toy spinning top that was the... As the dragon banked lightly, he looked down at the little toy spinning top that was the mighty Wernberg, and saw the swarm of creatures rising in pursuit. Nine reeds' wings pounded and flickered the air away temperately. The thinner air, too. Twoflower's ears popped for the third time. Ahead of the swarm, he noticed, was a golden dragon. Someone on it, too. "Hey, are you all right?" said Rincewind urgently. He had to drink in several lungfuls of the strangely distilled air in order to get the words out. "I could have been a lord, and you clowns had to go and—" Hearn gasped, as the chill, thin air drew the life even out of his mighty chest. "What's happening to the air?" muttered Rincewind. Blue lights appeared in front of his eyes. "Irk!" said Twoflower, and passed out. And that's where we'll end it for today. Yep. Oh, wait, one more line. The dragon vanished. So now there's no more dragon. I know. Cliffhanger, but I had to. Time was up to reading. So Hearn won, had his battle, won, and then was rescued by Twoflower and Rincewind. And now Twoflower is out, and the dragon is gone. So, and they're in like thin air because they're, instead of being smart and keep coasting, it went catch the dragon. Oh, I'm gonna need to make sure I'm in view. Okay, catch Hearn and then up, which was great. So that's gonna be interesting next time. That's tomorrow. So I've been Endragh. This has been Color of Magic. I hope it brought a smile to your face, and I will see you tomorrow night. Night, night, guys.